Hi everybody, this is Pete McGilvery. I'm with the Office of Environmental Management up here in Tallahassee with FDOT. I'm joined today by Mike Konikoff, one of our lead developers here that work on the Statewide Environmental Project Tracker, and today we're going to provide some training for folks that potentially want to participate from our local agency program with district permission. And the reason I say that is, as you'll hear as we go through this particular training, we're going to go through an overview of what the SWEP site does. We'll give you an overview of what it looks like. We'll talk about some logistics and stuff. And as we go through it, we'll also talk through what the environmental document review process is, and we'll talk about how you gain access. This access isn't necessarily open to everybody. It's access that's granted specifically by the specific district environmental management office leadership. So if there are folks out there that have an interest in participating, you can work through your local lab coordinator, who can also coordinate with your district environmental management office leadership to identify whether or not you're an individual who should have access to the secure system that we're going to demo today. Like I said, we're going to go through some logistics. We're going to give you an overview. We want you to understand how things fit in the overall environmental document review process, and where, if you are a LAP agency participating in the process, sort of where you fit in that overall scheme. We'll also go through a couple of different demonstrations. The first one will be an overview of the SWEP application itself. So that'll be some general navigation, where things are located, how you search and find things, how you look at a project page, things like that. We'll give you some more details, and then Mike will come back on and give a demonstration of the some of the interactive forms that are on the site. Specifically for this type of user community, the one we'll focus on is the Type 1 categorical exclusion checklist, and building up the project file to support development of that checklist. So what I'm going to do is go through the agenda a little bit. It's a little bit of a PowerPoint lead in, and then we'll switch between myself and Mike as we go through this training. The folks that are connected, this is a webinar, so you guys are on mute. If you happen to have any questions, feel free to type those questions in the chat box. We have folks monitoring the chat box, and at appropriate times we'll stop and answer those questions. Sometimes we'll jump right to it. If it's a question where maybe we answer it a few slides later, we might hold off, but we'll look at what the questions are, and we'll tackle them individually. The other thing I think is very important, and we continue to do, is we're recording this webinar. We recognize everyone out there is absolutely busy, and this webinar may not have fit into your schedule. So we want to make sure that we record the session and then provide access to it. This also can become an important resource, because there may be a period of time between when you attended this webinar and if you gain access to the SWEP application. You know, it might be several weeks or several months, and it may be like, what did they say? How do I do this? You'll have a resource that's being recorded that you could go back to and kind of re-see what we were looking at and rehear what we were saying to you in this training class. So with that, let's talk about SWEP itself and what it was designed to do and why we do it. The SWEP application, the Statewide Environmental Project Tracker application, was developed when Florida Department of Transportation went after NEPA assignment responsibilities from FHWA on highway projects. That was a fairly involved process, where we had to apply to the federal government to take on those responsibilities. We had to modify our own local laws and work with our legislature to waive the sovereign immunity law as it relates to actions taken and approved under NEPA assignment. What that means is that as a state, we could potentially end up in court and have to defend ourselves in a federal court. Previously, that was done by FHWA. To take on all of those additional responsibilities, That also meant in the negotiation of the MOU between ourselves and Federal Highway that there were lots of responsibilities that transferred, but also a lot of things that we had to report back and provide assurances for and be able to position ourselves so that we're ready for things that we have to do and demonstrate our performance and compliance. For instance, we annually would have to perform a self-assessment on all the approvals that are going through the system. Annually, FHWA would come and audit us to review our project files and look at our processes and verify that we're all meeting the intent of the executed MOU. So the Statewide Environmental Project Tracker was this one system that allowed us to take all the great things that everybody's doing out there. All the districts had fantastic systems. All the districts had been developing environmental documents. All the districts had ways of storing those records and managing those records. And we needed to have a single, basically, portal or one-stop shop where all of those things could live. So that was the genesis for the Statewide Environmental Project Tracker, is having this one-stop shop where we could track those projects around the state. We handle electronic reviews and approvals. We established the project record and all of the supporting files for each project that's being approved in the state under NEPA assignment. It's a location where we can do project file reviews for self-assessments, or FHWA can do project file reviews for their annual audit. It allows us to look at timeliness and report back our quality and performance results, which are also required back to Federal Highway Administration. Part of NEPA assignment is, can we do it faster as a state than they did it as a federal government? So to do that, we've got to be able to track how long it's taking to complete various milestones and report on that. The other thing it allows us to do is have this one-stop shop for where the records are being held. That also allows us to manage the files in a consistent way, establish a consistent naming convention. Each record type has a different duration for which we should keep and retain those files. So this allows us to actively manage those files specifically, as well as should there happen to be a legal challenge, we have the capability to go and work through our legal attorneys as well as our district staff and develop an administrative record from this online database. So at a very high level, that's sort of the key features of SWEPT and why we do it. The folks out there that are part of the process, of course, it's been built to facilitate the review and approval of environmental documents. So the district environmental managers and the project development managers are on there. They serve as a local approval authorities. You've got the district project managers as well as the various team members, their specialists. If there are LAP participants that have been identified in the local district, that those individuals should have access to the system. They are part of the community as well. We've got OEM, QA, QC staff here. We've got our legal staff up here in Office of General Counsel as well as in the districts, as well as contacts specifically for this program, the LAP coordinators being a resource in the particular district, as well as that environmental management leadership. So how do you get access? How do I request access to SWEPT? And really what it comes down to is, the way to think about it is, this is a closed system. The system does require a username and a password, and it requires that the local district environmental management office leadership identify you as an individual that should have access within SWEPT, and they identify what is your role, your level of responsibility that you would have within the system, as well as what's the overall jurisdiction. For instance, a person that is granted project entry and data entry roles in District 7, FDOT District 7, those responsibilities only exist in District 7. They don't carry over into District 1 or District 3 or anything else. So a big part of that is having some communication with that district environmental management office to identify, okay, who needs to be in there, what do they need to do, and what's their jurisdiction. If it's determined that a LAP agency should have some participants there, they would again work through that district environmental leadership to gain access. The only access that are granted to individuals that have that are coming in from the LAP is what we call project data entry, and I'll go through those various roles just a little bit. That allows you to like set up the project, begin to draft the materials, and kind of prepare things as it begins to move through a much larger approval process that occurs beyond just your role and responsibility. If you're a consultant, same thing, work through your consultant project managers in the district who will work through the leadership and gain access as well. When you're looking at the SWEP roles, we talked about sort of a little bit on there, which was the difference between, say, a project manager and data entry. And you'll notice on the data entry side, basically the way to think about it is the project data entry role is kind of setting things up for the approval. So they're creating the project itself, they're uploading the documentation to support the record, they're drafting some of the materials that are ultimately going to go through the approval process. And the way things work is, if you think about it, it's a constant bubble up. Think about individuals drafting material, it going through some internal QA, QC, it bubbles up to a higher level entity. It could be a FDOT project manager, it could be a consultant project manager, it could be somebody who's taking some ownership over what's being drafted. They then have the ability to review the materials, and if everything looks good, then they bubble it up through their district leadership to have it approved. The district, depending on the nature of the environmental document that's going to be approved, some approvals stay at the district. So for instance, you were creating a type 1 categorical exclusion. That's a delegated responsibility, always has been a delegated responsibility down to the district environmental management office. Your drafting of the type 1 and supporting material would go to that approval authority in the district for their review and approval. If you happen to be working on something that is a higher level document, think of a type 2 categorical exclusion or potentially an EA or something higher to an EIS, you have to go through another layer beyond the district of approvals as well. That would be recommended for approval from the districts, and then it would bubble up into the Office of Environmental Management approval process and would continue on until ultimately you would receive a signature from the director of the Office of Environmental Management. Through that NEPA assignment MOU, that's the individual within our agency that has the authority to sign those documents as we stand in and assume those responsibilities from FHWA. If we're coming back and thinking about LAP and where they would be assigned, if we have individuals that were working on LAP projects that ultimately were going to be signed by the district or by the Director of Office of Environmental Management, those individuals the level of access they would have would be project data entry. So I was trying to highlight that. Again, kind of the difference on the roles. The editor role is you're setting up that initial project file, you're uploading files into the database, you're beginning to draft the initial checklists or supporting materials that are uploaded into the system that ultimately someone would review and approve. They funnel up through the various district leadership for them to either approve or recommend and certify that it's ready to move on through approval as we go through the various process. And that could be, it's a 2-leveled approval process within the district. So simultaneously you would receive approval from the district environmental manager as well as the project development manager as well. So all that being said, before we go into some more details, what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop here. The focus of this training is going to be, we're going to talk about, okay, if we're a project entry person, we're a LAP agency participant, we're just getting access to the system, We're going to give an overview of sort of the navigation of the site, and then we're going to come back and talk through the environmental process, the approval process, and you can kind of see where your piece of everything kind of fits in the overall scheme of that approval process. So I'm going to give it back to Mike, and then he's going to go through the site in a general way, and then he'll give it back to me for some more details. So Mike.
All right. Thank you, Pete. Today we're going to be demonstrating from our testing and training server. So just to let you know, while you may see some real project information and names, it's all test data. I'm going to be logging in as a project data entry role. And what you'll see when you log into SWEPT is a layout that looks like this. There is a breadcrumb trail on the very top left, so as you navigate through the site, that will update depending on where you visit in the menu. Beneath that, you've got this menu icon that allows you to collapse the navigation menu. So I'm opening and closing that. The site's designed to be responsive, so it works on various screen sizes and with all the major modern browsers. And so you'll be able to use it on a tablet, on a phone, or on your desktop or laptop computer. The OEM and SWEPT logos are a link that take you back to this landing page that we're looking at now. And then beneath that is the navigation menu. There's a link to view alerts. When you're prompted for various actions, those will appear there. There's a project input setup menu. That's where you'll find all the forms that you can fill out in SWEPT, like the type 1, the type 2, the reevaluation. Project documents is where you'll find the environmental document submittal form, which is a form for routing environmental documents for approval. Then we have projects needing approval menu. This is really for the approvers, but anywhere from the district leadership on up to the OEM project delivery coordinators, environmental process administrators, OGC if they're involved, and the director. They have their list of projects awaiting their approval. And there's an overall OEM status report where you can see who was the last signature on a document, who's the next signature, and when were those actions taken. Project dashboards are for the schedule data for projects. So we've got various instances of the dashboards. There's the federal, that includes the type 2s, the EAs, the EISs. The state SWOT dashboard includes the SEERs, and then some projects have been flagged for higher level scrutiny will appear on the executive dashboards, and they have the same kind of organization, federal and state. We also have some performance reporting. Under the reports menu, you can find listings, searchable listings of the approved type 1 and type 2 CADX projects, as well as a project approvals report that will let you search both the type 1s, type 2s, and the higher level documents. And then there's a help menu that has an overview of what help is available and kind of describes the stuff I'll be going over right now. We have quick guides that go a little bit deeper into how to complete certain processes, but they're meant to be printable and a high-level overview of those processes. We have training videos where we actually demonstrate some of the features of SWEPT, and those recordings are available for you to review and get refreshed. And then we have our SWEPT contact list, which is both for central office and then for all the districts, who are the contacts for SWEPT. So environmental review and analysis, engineering, administrative support for each district, OGC, and then the district environmental leadership. Moving up to the upper right of the site, there's another alert icon. This one will go to the same My Alerts page that's in the left menu, but it will also show a red circle with a number in it, and those alerts are refreshed every so often. So as things pop up, you'll see a number potentially show up there, and you can click to see what actions you may have. There's also a user profile icon. This is where you can find the change password function. You can update your contact information and then also log out from the site. Beneath that, there's a search function. So you can search by FM number, project name, any or all of a part of a document name. So for example, I'll type State Road 20, and you can see the results listing. I've got various projects that match that name, documents, and then you can also search for people's names, and then you can use the options to determine which results you're more interested in. Going back to the home page, we have we also have here module menus. So these correspond to the menu items on the left, and they'll take you to landing pages for those various modules. Beneath that, we've got a quick view of your alerts. Here it's telling me there's been some changes. Usually that means something's changed in work program, like the project's name or FAP number. Those things are pulled in from work program nightly and updated on our site. You've got a listing of my projects. These are projects where you've been assigned some role, say as an editor on the project. And then you've got my region. These would be all projects in the district for a district user. Those lists are filterable. You can use the menus that appear above the columns to filter. Some of them you can even type in the name, and they'll filter down as you type. The links, the FM numbers are links that take you to the project page, and I'll open one of those now. And if you can either click the link to go directly to the page. Sometimes I like to control click. That opens the link in a new tab, so you can have both views open. And here we're looking at a project page, and it starts out with the project name coming from work program. FM numbers, here we just see the primary FM number for this project, but the editors are able to add other FM numbers using these edit buttons. Each FM number has a link to the item segment overview and project suite enterprise edition for that FM. FAP numbers, if they're available, are pulled in from work program along with the group identifiers, the district, the county. The project description is something you can enter as an editor. Work mix, activity type comes from work program. Class of action will be something you enter when you're setting up the project. ETDM numbers you can add here through a dialog, and also the local agency program information can be edited here, and we'll come back to that later. You've got on the middle column the district project team. These are all the editors and project manager if assigned. The OEM reviewers, and in this case, again, we're on our staging server, so there's more leads and backups than there would normally be on a project, and also some new roles for some additional functionality that is coming soon, where districts will be able to assign the reviewer role to folks to be able to come in and review documents, not necessarily edit them. OGC reviewers, if any, can be found below that. And then there's a detailed project contact listing with contact information, more contact information, including mailing address. We also have a listing of all the notifications that have gone out for the project. So as the project moves through different approval processes, notifications are sent via email. Those will be listed here on the project notifications link. And then you can see there's a small project map that highlights the project segment. Moving down the page, you've got the project schedule data. This is coming from the PSM database, and it's imported nightly. So it says here, it's from an export file dated from early this morning, not a live connection to the database. So as those scheduled dates are updated in PSM, they're pulled in nightly and will appear here. Green means the date occurred on time or early, yellow behind by less than 2 weeks, red more than 2 weeks behind schedule, and the A means the date has been actualized. And then beneath that, we've got the project documents listing. This is where you'll both upload files to SWEPT, as well as create some of those forms within SWEPT. So for example, editors can create a scope of services, they can create a type 2 checklist. You can see we have some new versions of that we're working on. The environmental document submittal form, status of environmental certification for federal project, as well as state, if it was a state project. And then here we have a couple of files that have already been uploaded for this particular project. Those can be sent over to EDMS, where they'll appear the next day. I'm going to move down the listing and show you beneath that, any files that have been tagged as correspondence will be relisted below. And then if you are one of the editors on the project, you have access to the confidential attorney work products, if any, have been uploaded to the file. And let me just show you what the file upload looks like. So if you are maintaining the project file and uploading files to SWEPT, you would use the upload button that appears in the category that corresponds to the file that you are uploading. So let's say I'm uploading an archaeological and historical file, and maybe it's a CRAS addendum. I would choose, what type of file that is, and then I would navigate to the file. I can put in a name for the file. It'll pick up that name from the actual file name on your computer, but you can rename it. And we have a file naming convention that gets applied consistently to all our files. So it starts out with FM number, class of action, the district. Then the middle portion is the file name that you're giving it here in this box, and then the date. The date's coming from the publication date. So let's say this file was from April 1. You can see that date is applied to the file naming convention. In addition to the file name, you also have a description for the document. So let's say it's a CRAS addendum. You can give further details about what that document is. And then we ask a short series of questions with some defaults that apply to most files. So is this an attorney work product? Most cases that would be no. Is it part of the administrative record? Most cases that would be yes. Is it exempt from public record? Typically no. Does the file contain, but maybe for historic and archaeological it would be yes. Does this file contain information that supports other topics? This allows you to tag the file as belonging to other areas, and the same link to the file can appear under multiple of these folders depending on what the file is. So if you say yes here, you get the folder structure listed again, and you can check which other areas that file may apply to, and then that link will appear in all those areas.
One thing I wanted to add into that, and actually this is a great screen to be able to show it, is that so behind the scenes in the database, especially, and you've heard Mike probably say it a couple times, he talks about the EDMS, which is the electronic document management system, and is a system that we use at Florida DOT to serve as the official record in the department. It manages our archives, it is our disaster and recovery storage of the files. And the way things are organized in that electronic database is it's tied to this concept of groups and types. So a group might be NEPA, and a type might be cultural as a type, and then these types of files may exist underneath there. The reason why this is important is because at the file level, you may have different retention requirements and storage requirements for those files. By just using this interface and just navigating to the appropriate folder location and selecting the right product is what we call it. Behind the scenes, it's passing all of the information to EDMS to tell it where to physically store it and for how long to store it. So that's just an important point, that when we rolled out SWEP, that was an important point to be able to handle that integration into that archival system, because the system is kind of clunky. It requires a lot of work and a lot of attributes. But the reality is, by interacting with this application, we already know who you are, we know which project you're working on, we know what the date is and what file you're working on. And then once you tell us where it needs to go, we can populate it with all of the right attributes and make sure that we're actively managing these files. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you. So you can save the file. It will give you a message that it's being uploaded, and then the file appears along with its publication date and file size. You can use the modify button to reopen that dialog, or the delete button to actually remove the file. Sometimes you'll see the modify and delete buttons are grayed out. Typically that means that that file is attached to a form in SWEP. So rather than delete it from here, you would have to go to the form that it's attached to, and here it's attached to a draft type 2. You would actually have to go in and edit the type 2 form to remove that file. And that is just to show you the edit and create buttons. That is how you create forms within SWEP that SWEP provides. So an example is the type 2 form. Another example is the type 1 form, and also the reevaluation form. When you are in one of those forms, you'll see the buttons above the form. Some of them become enabled. So that's typically what these buttons are for. The PDF button will create a PDF of the form. The zip icon will create a zip file of the form along with its supporting documentation. Some of our reports, like the approvals report, have an Excel export, and then we also have the scope of services has a Word export. So these will allow you to export those documents to the various formats. And then we also have this filing cabinet icon. This is how you can get from a form back to the project page, which is the home of all the project files. So that's the overview.
Sure. If you want to hand it back to me, we'll just go through a little bit more, and then we'll walk through kind of filling out one of those forms and how it all works. Great. Make sure everybody can see. Fantastic. So let's talk about where folks sort of fit in. Now, what I'm showing on the screen is a lot of information. It's really the review process, and at a very high level, I just wanted the folks that were attending this training to be aware. So in this first section, 1 and 2, the documents are drafted. They're internally reviewed to a point where you're doing all of at the very low district level QA, QC. It's all internal amongst yourselves, amongst the agencies, kind of staff working with the district to make sure that the document is written correctly, has all the appropriate attachments, you know, all of those various things. And if it makes it through that process, then it would go through the district certification, and then depending on what the nature of the document is, it could stop right at an approval. For higher level documents, which folks on this training may or may not be a part of, things like a Type 2, an EA, an EIS, or a reevaluation of one of those, there's a longer process that once it leaves the district, then it also goes through an external review process that involves staff from the Office of Environmental Management, where they have an opportunity to review the materials and submit comments back to the district. The district prepares responses. OEM, the staff up here, has an opportunity to review those responses. And then if everything's good to go, then it begins the approval process. The local district project manager is told, yes, go ahead and approve it. It moves up to their leadership. That leadership makes a recommendation to approve that document, whether it's a type 2, an EA, EIS, or one of those reevaluations. They send it up to the Office of Environmental Management, who verifies it. Hopefully, if not, they can send it back for some more work. And then it goes into the overall Office of Environmental Management approval process that involves a two-tiered review from staff level up to the program administrators and Office of General Counsel if needed, and they provide a recommendation to the Office of Environmental Management Office Director. This last part taking about 30 days. The reason I bring all that up is because in this training, I wanted folks to understand where y'all fit. If you're an entity that working through the district are granted access to the SWEPT application and you're developing the initial project setup and some of the materials, and you're creating the project record, you're uploading items, and you're drafting checklists and stuff. I just wanted to show you in the overall structure sort of where your box is. So everything we go over, everything that this role would do, all fits in that first box. But there's many more things that happen after that. You just wouldn't necessarily be a part of it. Something you would potentially be a part of is think about how comments can come back to you. So you may get to a point, if you were granted access to draft these materials and people review those materials, there may be a need to go back and look at those materials and edit them based on the comments. And so there are functions in place. They're really designed for much higher level documents that are already being handled between the district environmental staff and the Office of Environmental Management. But I just wanted you to be aware that there is sort of this process in place that allows us to either return things back to the start if the things that needed to be fixed are going to take a long time, or they need to be rethought. And there's also this minor edit process, which is the edits are considered to be editorial, minor corrections. They can be updated very quickly, and it allows you to stay within the existing approval timeline and get those edits quickly corrected and then approved. So I just wanted you to be aware of those two processes. But with that being said, we're going to jump back to being a project editor, and I'm going to hand it back to Mike. And what he's going to go through is how to do like a type 1 and how you would actually interact with the system and how you would upload documents and things like that. So with that, let's hand it back to Mike and let him finish going through the demo, and then we'll follow up to see if there's any questions, folks.
So we're going to start with a type 1 form, and again, you would find that under the project input setup menu and the type 1 categorical exclusion checklist item. And the first thing you'll see is a prompt for the FM number. So you'll enter the FM number, and I've just picked one at random.
And while Mike is entering that FM number, I wanted to hit a key point that folks maybe don't understand. Mike did gloss over the fact that every night we get a data dump of our work program database. The work program database is what we consider to be our financial management numbers, those FM numbers, and those equate to what we consider to be, FM is like our bank account, like if you're a bank. The project needs to exist with that FM number in that bank account. That shows that we're thinking about it, we're spending money on it, it's been programmed. So what you do initially is when someone is setting up one of these projects is they're verifying that the FM that they've been given that says this work is going to be performed actually exists in that database. So Mike's doing a demonstration, and the first thing they're doing is looking against the bank database to make sure that number exists.
Thank you. And you can enter all 11 digits of the FM number and load it. I'm going to show you where you have to enter at least the item number and the segment, and then you can hit the load button, and it'll show you all FMs that match that item and segment. So here we have a couple of FMs with different phase, group, and type for this item segment, and we'll pick one. Okay, and you can see it loads the type 1 form, and I'm going to collapse the left menu, and then I'm just going to kind of zoom in a little bit so you can see the form better. And starts out with the FM number. You can put in related FM numbers, and this is an auto completer, so as soon as you enter at least 6 digits, it'll show you a listing of matching FMs, and so you just pick one and it'll add it to the list, and you can add as many of those as needed, and that's helpful if you have projects that are related to each other. It pulls in the federal aid number for the primary FM number from the work program, as well as the name, the work mix, and the county. And then what's new is we have a local agency program option. So to be considered lab projects, federal dollars must be programmed in the adopted work program is the note, and then you'll click on the lab option. It's either yes or no. If you say yes, there's a follow-up question asking for the lab agency name. This is also an auto completer. So if you don't know, you can just hit spacebar and it'll show you every lab agency. We're on the stage database. There's a lot of test ones in there. So I'm just going to start typing and starting to type the county name, and just for the purposes of demonstration, assume that Escambia County is a lab agency, and you would select that. Beneath that lab agency name, you'll see the selection for whether the agency is already PD&E lab certified or will need to be PD&E lab certified via the lab coordinator, so you'll make the appropriate selection. And then the rest of the form is the same as the type 1 form that you're used to. You select the appropriate CE type, either C list or D list, and then the appropriate item from the list. I'm going to choose one at random, so it's not what this project is actually about. You put in the project description. Here you can either cut and paste from Word or type in a project description. And for those of you who may not have seen it, we also have the ability now to insert images into the project description, so you can either upload one, or you may have some recently uploaded images that you can pick from. So here's an image in the project description. You can right-click. That will allow you to resize the image using your unit of choice. It shows you the original size. You can give the image a label. You can choose the image alignment, left, middle, or right, and then whether you want to preserve aspect ratio, meaning should the image maintain its width to height ratio as you resize it.
One thing on this note that I want folks to think about is Mike is demonstrating the functionality of the features in the text editor. You wouldn't be putting a picture inside your project description. But the text editor itself, which is how you would enter information throughout the use of the form, has these advanced functions that allow you to bold things, italicize things, put in bullets, lists. You can put in images. He's showing a really pretty one right now, but maybe it was a table out of a report that you want to use to demonstrate, you know, how things relate across various alternatives because you're answering a different question. But overall, every one of these text editors have these functionalities, so what he's showing is just that ability within the text editor. Obviously, if you're filling out the form, you know, the information that belongs in the text editor, answering that question should be very relevant to whatever it is you're answering. So project description, you would expect to see a few lines of text, right, describing exactly what the project is. But later on, you may have something that says, how do you know you don't have any threatened or endangered species locations? You may have a table or a chart that you wanted to embed that quickly shows how you did your analysis and what the results were. So this is just an example. And it's a great example, and I'm glad that it's being shown. I just wanted to highlight that just because you can do it in a text box doesn't mean that that's an appropriate spot to do it. Thanks, Mike.
Thanks for the clarification, Pete. And I am going to show copying a table from Word. So here I just have a sample table, and I'm going to select the table and copy it. And I'm going to paste it into the description. So you do have that ability. And once the table's in there, you can also edit it within the application. And then moving on in the form, you're asked to read the note and the directions about if the project has any significant impact, stop, this form does not apply, check verified, so you can proceed through the rest of the form. So this action will not induce significant impacts, etc. You would verify that statement, and then the rest of the form appears. And the form is a series of questions about various issues and resources, starting with right-of-way, going into wetlands, bridge, permits, floodplains, wild and scenic rivers, endangered species. The form is interactive, so as you answer questions one way or the other, follow-up questions may appear. So for example, ESA listed species present, used key, no consultation required. You would have to enter the name of the species for that.
While Mike's doing that, a couple other things. This is just an overview training. We do have some more detailed training on actually filling out a type 1 and what the appropriate choices would be. That's available on our website, which we can show you at the end. The other things are, this is mechanically like how the tool works. If you have questions on how to interpret a question, how should I answer it, what's the appropriate documentation that needs to be in there, you really work through your district environmental management office for guidance. If they need to, they're more than welcome to pull in their Office of Environmental Management Project Delivery Coordinator up here. We have individuals assigned to each geographic FDOT district that are always available to help provide guidance and answer questions. But your first stop, if you're trying to draft these things and you've got some questions, should really be with your district environmental management office folks. They've been doing this stuff for a long time, and they should be able to help.
As you fill out the questions, if you provided the information that's expected and filled out the boxes that are expected, you'll see this has required documentation indicator change from a red exclamation point to a green check mark. And so you can see some of these questions I haven't answered yet. They still need information. I'm going to scroll through the rest of the form and just show you some of these items do have documentation upload buttons. Those function similar to what you saw on the project page. The difference is here we know, for example, this is a noise related file. So when you go to upload it, it's going to zero in on that. You can also, in addition to noise, if it was related to other areas, you could select that, but it's going to default to that noise area. And then scrolling through, some of the comment boxes are required. Those will be indicated with a red required text. Some of them are optional. Those are marked with the optional green text there. So you'll fill out the form. As you upload documents, they'll be listed all together in this documents section. you'll be able to choose between having them automatically be sorted, which means they're sorted in the order they appear in the document, or custom sorted, where you can kind of rearrange and change which is attachment 3 versus attachment 4, for example. And then you get to the bottom of the form. It gives you some important information, as well as a statement about the Memorandum of Understanding with FHWA. And as you're working, you can hit the Save Draft button to save the current state of the form. And so I've now saved it, and you get a confirmation message that it's saved. And then you can continue and pick up the form and finish later. When you're ready to send it to your project manager or district environmental manager for approval, there's a Send for Approval button that will allow you to do that. And an email will be generated and sent to that individual. They'll be able to review the information, update anything that needs to be updated. They'll be able to send it back to you for more information if needed, or they can actually approve it.
And I think that that's a key point that maybe folks that aren't necessarily familiar with this application, that is something else that we probably should highlight, is that every step throughout the process, there are notifications to those that either are the next in line to perform an action or those that have been part of previous actions. The idea is to be transparent with everybody and kind of prompt whatever the next thing that needs to come, like whether it needs to be approved or whether it needs to be reviewed. Whatever the case may be, it's to kind of prompt the next people. So usually the people who have an action are in the to, and then folks that have been part of the process are in the CC. And when you look at the email itself, it should provide some pretty concise direction on what's next.
The way the type 1s are organized, we have this concept of editors. So if you are the individual who created the type 1, you're automatically an editor. If you have other colleagues that need to work on it with you, let's say they're working on a specific resource area, you would use the Add Editor button to add those team members to the project. They will then get an email that says they've been added to the project and can now edit the type 1. So you can edit it together, and then when the entire document is ready, send for approval. After you add an editor, it is important to remember you do need to save, always save after you've added an editor. Also, after you've uploaded a document, you do need to actually go to the bottom of the form and hit save for that document to be saved and associated with this type 1. Once it's saved, you can create a PDF using the PDF button. You can also create a zip file that includes a PDF of the document, as well as all of the attachments or supporting documents that you can then download and have to distribute or have a copy of.
So just to kind of add onto this, so what was demoed today was the type 1. We think that's the most common instance that if someone outside the department and part of the local agency program is granted access to draft documents and create projects within SWEP, that seems to be the most common use case, where they would go find a project, they would start it and create it, and they would begin to go in and draft the responses. Ultimately, after that's completed, and as Mike demonstrated and is up on the screen right now, once it's drafted to a point where it's ready to begin the approval process, that approval process stays within the district and notifications are sent. The district can then approve the type 1 that was drafted, or they could have some questions and either return it back to you or make some edits to it to ensure that we have, dotted all our I's and crossed all our T's as we're developing this documentation. Should we need to go, should the folks that are being provided access need to work on a type 2 or have potentially a reevaluation of a type 2 or something even higher, the tools work exactly the same. You know, you set up a project, you interact with the interactive form, you upload documentation that substantiate a choice, or you fill in information in a text box that provides some context to a particular selection. From there, the process is the same. Once everything's drafted, it gets reviewed internally to a point where it's ready to be approved, and then it moves on through the approval process. Each time it moves through the approval process, there are opportunities and feedback loops in place where it could be returned for minor edits or returned all the way for some additional revisions. But all in all, the process is really just the same. So maybe you can give it right back to me, Dean, and I think we're about to finish up. If you could maybe take a look and let me know if there's any questions out there.
No, Nicole did provide the people that are in her room, so others may want to do that as well.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Nicole. The one other thing I wanted to kind of finish off with is that, again, this was a recorded session. We put all of the recorded sessions up at this location under SWEP videos. There's the direct link at the bottom, but it's on our regular DOT homepage. We go to the Office of Environmental Management, the OEM training program. Within there, there are several tracks. SWEP is track number 2, and under there we populate with any of the trainings or recordings that we provided. This was an overview, but there's more detailed training if you want to see how specific forms or processes functioning on there as well. So not hearing any more questions, I just wanted to thank everybody for attending today, and we hope you have a great day and enjoy the rest of your week. Take care. Bye.